Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Mic check. Hi. If it's not a little awkward, it's not me. Hi, I'm Stevie, one of the practitioners, and I'm honored to be up here with you today. I see some new faces, which is amazing. Goodness, before I even dig in to my speech today, I'm in awe. I have been with the center for, correct me if I'm wrong, 6, 7 years? Maybe 8, I don't know, it's been a long time. And you know, certain things about what I learned in regards to this philosophy were things that I knew coming into the center. But seeing the demonstrations are just something more than having pure knowledge or wisdom. And I'm not gonna lie, when it comes to coordinating with the choir before the Sundays to get the correct songs, I do not participate. Shame on me. I give it all up to God, and every single time the song choice is so meticulously right. Today I don't even feel like I need to talk because the songs were so on point as far as the message that will land home, and music just speaks a different way than words ever could. So Aaron, choir, that really just touched my heart. I stopped myself from getting a little choked up with some of the lyrics that just really resonated with me today. So thank you. There's something really special about trusting how things will fall into place. Now, today was a message that I personally really needed to hear. And so as I'm speaking and finding my way to be of service and sharing this with everyone that's listening, when I say that as practitioners, we treat ourselves as often as we treat others, today is a perfect example of that. Speaking from the heart is what I've learned to do best, but once again, sometimes it feels like I need to hear it just as much as I need to say it. Now, the theme for this month, as I'm closing it out, has been the theme of home. And there's so many different things that came to mind when I thought of home. The overarching screaming theme, of course, was home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is, which I'm sure probably is something that has come up as other people have thought about the concept of home. But the more I kept thinking about where I've been within my own relationship with home and really my heart, I kept going back to The Wizard of Oz. Now, this is one of my favorite stories as a kid. It still is to this day. They've done a lot of renditions of it, but the key principle of that storyline really, really just resonated with me. How often do we find ourselves in life on this yellow brick road, if I may, hoping that we will meet or find or gather what it is that we need to do the next thing that we want to do. Not to say that we're out there looking for a wizard, but sometimes I kind of find myself looking for a wizard. It's almost what it seems like. Now in this story, which most of you probably know, a little recap, we've got Dorothy who, of course, with Toto, ends up on this trail and this path where she collects some friends along the way who all seem to have a very unique but similar mission. Each and every one of them is missing what they would consider to be a key component to their happiness. Things such as, and I was staring at this sign here, courage, love, and wisdom. Of course, we had the cowardly lion, and my cat, his name is Courage, so it kind of resonates, who this whole time was on this trip hoping to find a wizard that would grant him bravery. We had this scarecrow who, if I'm not mistaken, was looking for a brain. The whole time, just couldn't figure out what it was going to do, what he needed to do in order to get to that place where he could find a brain. And then, of course, we had the Tin Man who was on a search for a heart. If I only had a heart, he says. Now, for me as a kid, of course, it was like, ooh, yes. As a kid, I was wrapped in before I saw the whole movie that they were going to find this wizard and get this wish granted for them, and it was exciting. But if you paid attention to the story, these characters played key roles within the storyline where the number one attribute that they brought to the table was the thing that they were searching for. Throughout the entire journey, when it came to that time where someone had to be brave, pull up their pants and do the scary thing, it wasn't Tin Man, it was Courage. When it came down to that time to really anchor into that kindness, that lovingness that was going to carry them through, it wasn't necessarily Dorothy, it was Tin Man. And so I found myself really recognizing the amount of times that I am searching externally for that thing that is showing up within me. So how many times do I wish I could click my heels and end up where I want to be in life? Yeah, I wish I could have found red slippers for today. And the only ones I had were tennis shoes, and it was really going to throw off the outfit. So But the story, she gets to find her way home at the end. Now, some of the major points that I really want to anchor into is what we are looking for truly is within us. And I think sometimes we need to go through experiences that allow us to recognize that we had it all along. And that is something that has been unfolding quite often in my life. Now, in many ways, I feel like we get to this point where it's almost addicted to destinations, and it's like, well, once I get this, then I can focus on meditation, or once I get this job, then I will have enough time where I can focus on doing my affirmations. It's once I get, and what we're doing is taking ourselves immediately out of the present moment. We are putting these goals, these aspirations, these things that really can help us in the now moment. We are putting them off immediately outside of our access by putting it into a mindset of when I get here or when I get this. And when I say I have been doing this so much lately, going from quitting my job to finding 3 new jobs and finding that balance and that freedom, it's been a lot of, okay, well, once I start this new schedule or once I get into a good rhythm. And I just keep finding myself chasing that thing. And once I get that thing, oh, well, guess what? There happens to be 3 more. Oh, okay, well, then when I get that down and once I get this training in, and it has taken me out of what do I have right here and right now. Now, I think that life will often deceive us into feeling like if we don't get that external validation, then maybe we don't have those things that we're searching for. And so I think that there are many ways that we can practice being more present. And even as I say this, I'm still seeing myself playing times in my head recently where I wasn't. And I'm still having to challenge myself to be in this now moment. Now, I think that there's a lot of different ways that I could have taken this message. And when I wrote everything down, it was a really positive spin on how we can practice staying anchored in the now. And I came up with things such as refrain from the things that put you in the future. When we learn in training to be practitioners, how to do affirmations, which at the end of the day, you'll get to choose your affirmation card. So feel free to verify this information. The best affirmations are present. There's like 3 P's, maybe 5 P's. Please don't test me, Reverend Don. But that have to be required in order for it to be a powerful affirmation. Powerful is one of the words. But the one that always resonated with me is present. Now, a lot of times you'll hear affirmations like, I will be successful. And I'm not saying that that's a bad affirmation, especially if it's a step up from I've been a failure. Huge, huge step up. But I am successful brings that truth into the now versus continuing to put it off until something else potentially happens first. And I can't tell you how often I get once again caught into that I will or I'm going to. So let this be an invitation for you to set a trigger around I will or I'm going to. Now, I think the first step when we're watching our mindfulness is if you see yourself or catch yourself saying, I don't want. Now, that was where I started. And I am right back to that place these days is if I am saying I don't want, I've already tapped in with my brother, I've tapped in with my boyfriend. If you hear me start my sentence with I don't want, please nudge me. And we're both at the point where we're saying I don't want, and then we're rephrasing our thoughts. But I think the next step is I will or I'm going to instead of I am. So that's one of the best ways just to start getting more aware of where your thoughts are. I also think the other thing that came up for me was you have the choice to choose again. And, I think in my life, I've been really faced with this, okay, I made a choice and I stuck with it for 10 years and it was retail. And I was talking to my brother, it's like, you get to choose again. But guess what? If you don't love that, then you can choose again. But sometimes you're not gonna know what that third choice will be for you until you've at least made the second choice. And so say you do focus on something that is really present and right in front of you instead of trying to plan something else, you're gravitating towards what is, and it still doesn't feel right. You get to choose again. Now, I think the default of our expression is love. Peel all the layers back. We are truly that divine expression of God. Now, that is something that we have accepted as truth. But there are many times in life where we get to see our own thoughts that put on almost this mask over that truth. So when you spend time on that default, by mindfulness, self-observation, and discipline, I think we can carry ourselves to an awareness that allows us to quit going after something in the future. Now, a long time, I feel like the beginning of my spiritual journey was healing the past. And I think that sometimes that is where it starts. We have a lot of baggage, suitcases full of ick and gunk that we've got to kind of pile through and donate clothes and burn clothes and we got to go through that suitcase. And because I'm not any different than the rest of us, we've had trauma. I'm sure there's been tragic incidences in our past. I spent so much time, and I felt like the main thing pulling me out of being present was going back into the past. Well, after doing so much work, especially after coming to the center and being able to heal the past, I was never even prepared to see myself in a situation where I am running so far to try to get to the future that I'm also taking myself out of the now. And that was an aha moment for me, because it's not just the past that will keep us trapped. It is also sometimes being so focused on trying to get to the next place, trying to accomplish something else, instead of recognizing that there's an opportunity right now, right in front of you, to be that of what you want to be in the future. And once again, this message is for me. I spent 6 months of the last year trying to focus on moving out of state. And not, obviously, you have to plan for the future. It is going to happen. But I realized I was so focused on being there that I have not taken care of myself in the now. And I have said no unconsciously to a lot of things that have showed up in the now for me to work on. So I think that brought me into a dream that I had last night. And I was really trying to figure out how to tie this into the speech today, because it had to come up. And I realized The Wizard of Oz, at the end of the movie, what do they show? Dorothy waking up from a dream. And it just obviously made the perfect excuse for all the crazy things that happened in Oz to be real, because it was a dream. But I realized that our dreams are such an important guide. And when it comes to being present, because really that is the main point of my talk today, is finding that way to be at home with ourselves by being present, instead of trying to escape the now by either being stuck in the past or too concerned about the future. And I feel like there are many things that point to us where our heart is stuck. It has been scientifically proven that there are chemicals, when we think about memories, there are chemicals that are released within our body that take our heart back to that same exact experience. Even though our mind is right here, whatever triggered in your body electrically from the inside out is actually recreating itself. So that experience almost relives again and again and again. And that is a very physical way that you are being taken out of the now moment. Now, for me, it's dreams. I have recognized over the past 10 years, there are about 3 locations in my dreams that I always find myself. My grandmother's house, my best friend's house from growing up. I don't even go there anymore, but I still dream about it, I would say at least 3 times a week. In school. I can't get out the classroom, y'all. I am stuck at school. It is crazy to me. Which maybe means my soul is always, yearning to learn. But I had a dream, and it really, really, really brought me to the realization of where my heart is asking me to do some healing, so I no longer have to keep visiting that place in the past. Where I am stuck, that is pulling me from being completely present, because there is healing required. And that to me was like the aha of what was making so much sense, because I think that we want to be present. We know, especially after COVID, that our interactions with each other are everything. We were stripped from having that face-to-face, that intimacy from so long, that I think so many people want to be present, but we don't always know how. Now you add the layer of technology. How are you really supposed to be present here in this kind of moment when everybody is so constantly distracted? Well, I had this dream last night. And in this dream, I was at school, and I was with a friend. She was my closest friend throughout all of high school. Now, I haven't talked to this friend in probably 10 years. We had a falling out, something that was not necessarily her fault or my fault. But it happened. And to this day, I find myself having dreams about this friend. Now, I don't necessarily know that the right thing to do is just to reach out, because at the end of the day, there's something else within that is still hanging on to this relationship. Maybe something that I felt like I could have done better. Maybe I didn't really show her while we had our friendship that I really actually did care for her and that she meant so much for me. Whatever it is, I go back to this friendship, and I'm always dreaming about her. It's crazy. Well, last night I ended up in this dream with her. And we're in school, and we end up running away from a panda. Oh gosh, don't even. I'm in the dream telling somebody else about the dream, like, are pandas even in Alaska? Like, I was so convinced it was real. So we end up in this elevator in the school, which isn't even usually a thing. So I was obviously deep within the dream. And this elevator was on the edge of like the hallway, and the hallway was overseeing 4 stories in the school. Now, why we were in such a dangerous place, I don't know, because unless there's danger, I'm not learning. So in this dream, we're in this elevator together, it's closed, and we can tell that it's unstable. And we're just sitting here having conversation about like, okay, well, how do we get help, this, and that, we're trying to troubleshoot. And then I knew in my mind that something was getting ready to happen, and I braced myself. And like she leaned back in the elevator, and it, of course, wobbled forward. And before you know it, her and I are in this elevator, this is literally last night, toppling down. And I just feel like this sense of gravity being defied. I can feel the fear of we're about to crash together in this elevator. And it was just such a terrifying feeling. And we're just falling, and I'm just waiting for this crash, right? And instead of just waiting for the crash, something just took over me. And I said her name, and I'm like, I love you. And I just don't know where it came from. But when we crashed, we didn't even get hurt. We came out of the elevator, and she went her own way. And I just woke up this morning, like, really feeling that sense of where my heart is still wishing I could have said what I should have said in that moment. Where my heart is still being pulled to, are you showing up and really giving people that full version of yourself? Or are you playing it safe in your relationships over and over again, so that way if you do lose somebody, it doesn't hurt as much? And it has been years since I've talked to this person, and obviously she still means a lot to me, but I have dreams constantly where I'm replaying events or I'm having these new scenarios with these people, and I am recognizing that these are things that when I heal, when I forgive myself, when we go back in, obviously we can't change the past, and that just really is what it is. We cannot change the past, but forgiveness at least allows us to release the chains. And so if there is something that you are finding in your life is pulling you constantly to the future, maybe it's pulling you to the past, it's pulling you to that relationship that is not serving you or where you wish you could have done, it's time to click your heels and get back into this now moment and allow yourself to forgive so you can be present. And that to me was just huge. And obviously I've had so many other dreams, but that last night, I felt like Dorothy, who was getting swept up into Oz as I was just falling down this elevator. And as soon as I decided to choose love instead of fear in that moment, I just felt this sense of relief. And even this morning, I just feel a little bit lighter. And that's really the best way I can describe this. So, home is where the heart is. I knew I had to bring it back into this. It's the here and now. Now, I think it's really important that we talk about how, going into ways that we can practice mindfulness and setting those word triggers and maybe even pulling a partner. There's probably somebody in your life that could benefit from a little nudge every once in a while when they're going down a verbal pathway that doesn't affirm their greatness. But I think something I learned from TED Talks, it's almost as certified as Google, is that we need to know why. Like, our brains are hardwired. You can give somebody all the directions. You can give them the how all day long. But until we wrap our mind around the why we are to do something, it will never be a consistent change. And so I think for me, obviously, thinking about what is in it for me. Let's just get real. What's in it for me? It's a question that we ask ourselves. And when you can answer that and find something that actually resonates, there is a chance for longevity when it comes to change. Now, I feel like what happens when we get centered in the now? What happens when we anchor ourselves in the present moment versus allowing that natural gravitation towards the past or the future? Well, obviously becoming more personally aware can be painful. It can be painful, but it is also, to me, one of the most beautiful things. I have recognized that I am not always easy to be around, and I think my boyfriend is watching. Thank you so much for everything. I am not always the easiest to be around, and we probably all feel that way at times. But I am no longer at a place where I'm chasing after people who are going to constantly make me feel like I need to be something other than where I'm at in the moment versus somebody who accepts me as where I'm at in the moment. And that helps me to continue to practice the self-awareness and do better versus falling into resentment. And so I think that personal awareness, it can be tricky, but it is such a blessing. I mean, how many times do we find ourselves maybe a little bit irritated with somebody because they just don't see it. They don't see how they're showing up in the world or how they're treating others. So I think that one of the benefits of being present is personal awareness. And it's something that unfortunately no one else can do for you. It really is a gift that you can give to yourself. Now, I think being more focused and attentive is also a gift. I can't tell you how many times I have put my purse on my shoulder, I have grabbed my keys, and I am all the way down the hallway, and then my watch vibrates, which means my phone is no longer in vicinity, and I'm already at the car. That present moment, it's times like that where your brain is just a lot more centered, where you're not just thinking this, and that, but you can gather all your belongings. It sounds so simple, but every time I walk to the car and I gotta go walk back up the stairs to get something that I forgot, I'm just like, ugh. It's the little moments like that where we are scattered and you just find yourself more balanced, more centered, and more in tune. Now, obviously, I talked a little bit about anxiety, and I don't want to get into it too much because it definitely is something that resonates with me, but I do feel like a lot of anxiety is triggered from getting concerned about what ifs. It's a story that we start to tell ourselves of hypotheticals, and they're all possible. It's all a possibility. But we get anxious before it even happens. And if I think about it, how do you feel right now? Not yesterday, not about what you're doing after Costco. How do you feel right now? And I'm asking myself, I can breathe deeply. There is a roof over my head. There are no clouds in the sky. There's a beautiful community around me of people who I can tell are receptive and who want to step into love. Now, if I start thinking about, okay, well, the world is going through this and then I've got this responsibility, yeah, the now moment gets cluttered and it gets cloudy and it doesn't feel as pure. But right now, unless your stomach is hurting, you're probably feeling okay. And that is what I had to keep reminding myself is right now I'm good. It's always when I take myself out of the now moment that the depression, the anxiety, the fear starts to fill in that gap. Now, the other thing that I want to reiterate is why is it so important to be present? Well, as we saw in The Wizard of Oz, what you will start to notice is a lot of these gifts, these characteristics that we admire, that we would like to embody ourselves, they're already showing up for us. Just like the lion, he already had that bravery. But instead of figuring that he had to go and search for it and have somebody else say, hey, it's already inside of you, once we decide to be present, we will recognize that those things are absolutely already showing up. Now, I think that that is one of the biggest gifts is when we recognize that which we want or that which we're trying to gain is already in our lives. It's something that we already have. Maybe it is bravery. Maybe it is strength. But sometimes we will end up in situations where we have to go down this yellow brick road and we have to fight a couple of witches and baboons and whatever else was coming up down the Wizard of Oz in order to actually recognize these strengths. And can I tell you what? I have chosen that. And I have also recognized that, okay, well, maybe I will just do a little bit more reflection and recognizing how things are showing up. But, you know, one of the things that has continued to pull me out of the now moment is feeling like I have to prove myself. Now, that feeling of not being good enough, I could do a whole nother sermon. We could be here till tomorrow. But it is something that constantly pulls me out of the now moment, is thinking about being better or doing better than I was or proving. And it's something that as a kid, I feel like I went through a lot, is being up against 4 other siblings, not that it was a competition, being up against 4 other siblings and feeling like I wanted my parents to see that I was the good girl or that I was worthy or whatever it was. And I constantly felt like I ended up in this place where I had to prove myself. And as an adult, guess what? I'm still battling that same exact thing. And instead of just accepting that no matter what, one of the songs even said it, I am beautiful just as I am good just the way that I am. Yes, I want to grow, but I am good where I'm at. No, I am still chasing this idea of having to prove myself. So I have manifested a beautiful circumstance in my life recently where I had to see it. I had to watch the external world repeat back to me, mirror unto me what was going on within that was pulling me from the now. Experience it all over again, get this crazy test that happened, going into a new industry, justifying that I had it all along and I knew I had it all along. But going through somebody else telling me, no, you don't have it. I need you to work a little harder for me to see that you have it. Everything that I was thinking inside until somebody else said it to me out loud, I was able to just kind of like keep shoving it under the rug. But as soon as somebody else was like, are you sure you're good enough? Something inside of me lit up like crazy. But why does it have to come to that point when I can continue to choose? And that really was a huge wake-up call for me. It's like, do I want to figure it out for myself? Or do I want to continue to invite characters in my life that will mirror it back to me so I can really listen? It's probably already happening in other areas of my life as well. I think the other beautiful thing is things happen faster when we are right here, right now. The things that we do want, they're no longer when I get or off when I can finally. You recognize that it is right in front of you. And there's something really magical about recognizing the speed of light. And I'm not just talking about scientific, the speed of light. When God shows up, when you say yes, when you are present, you recognize that God is already around you. Everything that you need is actually probably at your fingertips. And so for me, that was a game changer. So once again, yeah, I know that there's a lot of times in life where it feels like we should just be able to click our heels and end up somewhere where we thought we could be or where we should be. But instead, I'm going to invite you to click your heels and remind yourself to be present. Now, we are getting ready for the holidays, and it's going to be that time where everybody says the present is the present. And it really is. And I didn't want to go into that, but that really is what it comes down to. Finding yourself in the now moment and recognizing where your heart is pulling you out of the now. Instead of bypassing that, finding a way to be at home within yourself by healing those things that are pulling you out of the now. And that was one of the biggest lessons that I could learn. So whether if it's Tin Man or the lion or the scarecrow, maybe it was one of the witches, that's probably for me, whoever you relate to in the story, I want you to recognize that everything that you have, everything that you need, it is all within you. And so I'm going to invite my colleagues at this moment to just anchor that truth. Finding ourselves really in that place where our heart is purely open, where we recognize that there is nothing in between us and that spirit. When we look at God and we see that there's an infinite amount of wisdom, an infinite amount of courage and love available, being expressed through and as us. We no longer have to run and chase after that of which could be when we see that we are. If God is, then I must too be. And so whether if it's scarcity, lack and limitation, whether if it's a fear, or maybe it's a relationship that is pulling you out of the now moment, well, you have the choice to choose again. And as I say this truth for myself, that I am choosing love, I am recognizing that there is that same choice within every living being on this planet. And that love is already boiling through each and every one of our veins, our arteries. That love is what keeps us alive. And so as we choose love for ourselves, allow us to choose love for those around us. Choose love for this world, for this environment, for every living creature. Finding that there is nothing more beautiful than what is in the here and now, that gift of knowingness, that gift of awareness, the gift of being able to heal and let go. Finding that home within our own hearts. And so I just give thanks. I give thanks for that peace of mind, that calmness that happens when we anchor into that center. Trusting that as all that anxiety fades away, all that is left is that truth of wholeness. And so once again, I just say yes. I say yes to accepting the things that I cannot change, and to know that when it is time to click my heels and choose again, I can do just that. And so I let it be. I let it go. And so it is.